My friend, you do not hear this enough, and that is you matter. Your role as a father is so important. Thank you for being here. Thank you for stepping into this opportunity, this responsibility that you've been given to be a father. My conversation today with Steve Kaplan was incredible. And three nuggets that stuck out to me are: one, the difference between honor and respect. Number two is the two things that make you a man. And number three is how to live a life that thinks multi-generationally. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 12 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yep, I'm in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, steward, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my new friend, Steve Kaplan. And my friends, this conversation is incredible. Steve is full of stories, wisdom, conviction. The overall conversation is authentic, real, and extremely powerful. Steve is a husband, father, Navy SEAL, a leader, an incredible business owner, impacting lives of many. He lives daily to be himself and bring hope to the world. Enjoy meeting my friend, Steve. Podcast recording starting right now. So Steve, I've never done this before. I'm almost at 500 episodes. Anytime I have a believer, a Christian that's on the podcast, I will pray prior to hitting record, just like, hey, let's just like throw this up and pray. But I'm going to do this live, not live, but like on the recording because, I've got Steve Kaplan on here. One of your nicknames is Chaplain Kaplan. It took us about 30 minutes to figure out how to get on this call. So it just felt like roadblock. And I'm like, you know what? When these things happen, it means there's some gold, some holy moment that's about to happen. So if you're good, I'm going to throw down a quick little prayer for us.
Absolutely.
Okay. God, you are the ultimate father. What an opportunity you've given Steve and myself and all the dudes listening to be able to be fathers on this earth. I just pray for a holy moment right now that while we pause and talk fatherhood, there'd be zero ego, there would be all love, all connection to you, opportunity for both of us to grow. And as men listen to this over the days, the weeks, the years, that they would be inspired and influenced to look in the mirror and truly see who they are and the opportunity that you've given them to take ownership and responsibility and really stewardship of the people you've placed in their care. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Yeah, bro. Okay. So out the gate here, Joseph Hahn on Instagram, the bearded frogman. When I asked him who is a great dad, he said you. Why do you think he said that?
Well, Joe, it's interesting. Like we were talking right before this podcast started, is that SEALs know each other primarily by reputation. He's got such a good reputation. It was through a mutual Navy SEAL friend that we actually connected with one another. So I just called him up one day and said, hey, why don't you just come to Hawaii? Because I live here in Hawaii and Oahu. And I said, why don't you come hang out and check out our company and just, take a load off your shoulders. Comes out. And actually the craziest thing is he came out probably during one of the worst weeks of my time as a business owner. He didn't really see it because he's just like, oh, this is great. We're doing all this cool stuff, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that were kind of falling apart. And maybe it's just because he saw I handled myself. It's different when you're the guy behind a gun in combat and how you handle yourself. But it's another thing when you're enemy, you can't pull the trigger and take out their existence. So you have to deal with them. And I was going through a lot of betrayal at that time as well. And, you can only be betrayed by a friend. You can't be betrayed by an enemy. Enemies are easy to deal with. It's hard when a friend does something bad to you and how to maintain your character and composure and do what's still the right thing and not try to be vindictive and not try to be and retaliate in a way. That whole eye for an eye thing.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, you actually have to forgive, and forgiveness forgiveness sucks. It just straight up does. It sucks because that means someone wronged you and they don't have to pay for it. And you don't send them the bill. And in my case, it was a $200,000 bill. So I didn't send the bill. I took it on the cheek, and then I was like, you know what? Let's just move on. So, and that's what we did. So maybe, and I don't know if he understood that was going on, but I think he understood I was struggling, and how I managed to maintain myself during that. I would guess. I'd have to ask Joe. He's such an awesome guy.
Yeah, man.
He's crazy smart, so he probably saw right through a lot of that too.
That's beautiful, though. Like those moments where a friend can see, and then I think those are the moments that connect us, right? Because they see when we see character like that, it makes it, especially if we're pursuing that ourselves, it binds us to another human. Stephen, how old do you find yourself today?
I don't know how many hundreds of years do my joints feel. Let me see. How old am I right now? I'm actually 44. Yes, I'm 44. But man, my bones hurt so bad. My joints hurt so bad. So if I was to put a number on it, I would say 115.
115. I think my favorite, I just love asking that question because nobody expects it. And then it's just hilarious, the different answers. Stephen, how many years you been married?
Let me see. I got married in 2010. So about 15 years.
Love it, dude. Congratulations. And how many kiddos do you have and what's the age?
We just have the one. And my son is actually my adopted son. No one ever believes it because he kind of looks like me too. So when I married my wife, she had a 9-year-old son. His name was Austin. Father was pretty much out of the picture. So I adopted him as my own. He has my last name. I'm dad. I've been dad since before I said I do to my wife. And we've had that relationship ever since. And when people find out that he's my stepson, and I usually don't tell anybody, but hearing him sing on a podcast for the whole world, they're usually in shock and awe because he's so much like me. He talks like me. He laughs like me. He looks like me, except his hair is blonde. Mine's not blonde. But my wife's blonde. So we'll just say, you got that trait from my wife, which is true. So and he's actually currently in the Navy right now. He's at AS. He asked me one time, he's like, Dad, do I have what it takes to be a frogman? I said, absolutely not, man. I'm sorry. You just don't have that killer instinct, man. You're way too nice. He's a great young man, but it takes a special breed to be a frogman. You just either have it or you don't. You're born with it or you don't have it. So like when we go through buds, that's like boot camp to become a Navy SEAL. So it's your basic underwater demolition SEAL training. Like I always say, it doesn't make a Navy SEAL, it finds one. Just weeds out the rest. And it weeds out some really good guys. They just don't have that killer instinct. So the guy that Joe has, or we're talking about Arabito with what your hat, with half-face blades, like, man, those guys are killer instincts. And you have that or you don't. And I don't think that's trained into you. You could be trained from, but not trained into you.
Man, that's good. Hey, thinking back to when you got married and you were in this process of like building relationship with Austin, if there's a dude right now who's listening to this, who's in a similar situation, you know, he's starting to cultivate a relationship with this young boy. What are some things that you think you did well, or some tips that you would give to somebody if they were stepping into that same role to become a father to a kid who didn't really have one in his life?
So what I didn't try to do was try to win his favor. And that's an interesting thing to say because I did win his favor, but I did it without trying. My goal was to love his mother with everything inside of me and to make it incredibly obvious, to have eyes only for her, to honor her, respect her, to love her no matter what, and not make him watch, but allow him to watch. He sees that I have dedicated my life, and I mean that to the point of death if necessary, to his mom, my wife. It bred a culture of honor and respect that he got to live under that umbrella, and it gave him the opportunity to really understand what it is to live in freedom. There was no weirdness going on. There was no I don't want to say, it wasn't like you're the baggage that came with the prize. There was none of that stupid crap. It's like, your mom is the love of my life. And because of that, you get to live in this shadow, which is a great place to cultivate your upbringing. It's not a good place to live when you're an adult. It's a good place to grow up and cast your own shadow later on. And he understood that. And because of that, he got to live a childhood that he would have never had I, his father, stepped into this role and loved his mama and allowed that household of freedom for him to grow up in.
Dude, so powerful. So the you loving your wife, right? Like you sacrificially making her the priority, that created a space of freedom for any kid, right? Like kids can come through the door into the home and experience stability and peace and freedom based on the way that the father is loving the spouse. Any other, it's gold. And I don't know that a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, and it's really sad. It should be Fatherhood 101, honestly. And I come from a background where most men, unfortunately, these days don't have. Like my father is my hero. My father, if you look at it through the world's eyes, isn't someone that's super great or accomplished or whatever. My dad is a carpet salesman. He's a floor salesman, sells cabinets too. He's retired now. But as far as his occupation was concerned, like who cares? You know, he's made money selling stuff. But my father is a man of honor and integrity and absolutely loves Jesus with all of his heart. And I've never seen my father even take a glance at another woman. Not on a television, not on his phone, not walking down the street, on the beach, ever. He has only ever had eyes for my mom. And that's why if I created a culture like that for my son, because that's what I experienced growing up. I mean, it was embarrassing actually when I was a kid because my parents, they would make out. I'm a teenager. They'd make out at the kitchen table and tell us to go take a hike outside unless we want to be scarred for the rest of our lives. You know, I look at it now, I'm like, man, that's actually super cool. But when you're a kid, you're like, oh, it's disgusting. No. Yeah. And I'm the oldest of two. I got my brother Rachel, or my brother Keith, and my sister Rachel. And we'd go outside and play for a little bit and come back in, and everything was good. But that was the household I grew up in. It was a household of love and honor, respect, and a very godly home too. My father taught me what it meant to actually live a life of the fear of God. That's the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. It's a great place to start with your relationship with God. Bad place to end. That's a great foundation to build your life on. You start with, I'm scared to death of my dad, your heavenly dad, because he has the power to throw me in hell. That's a real thing. So you start that way and you realize that, hey, I've lived a life that deserves to go there. That's the fear of God. That's the real thing. That fear later turns into a respect like I have for my father right now. I'm not afraid of my dad to, punish me, but I have such a respect for my father and a fear for disappointing him to this day. And I'm 44 years old and I live my life today that thinks multi-generationally. The decisions I make today, what does that mean as far as honoring my dad in my last name? And what does that mean in the generation following me, my son and his kids? So it's not the same when you just think about yourself. Here's the thing. When I was for about 7 years, I was one of the gatekeepers of people that are already in the Navy and people who want to join the Navy to go into BUDS, to become a Navy. So I interviewed about 1,600 young men.
Wow.
1,600. It was a lot. I mean, sometimes it was like in groups of 10, 12. Sometimes most of the time it was actually one-on-one. And so I'd have to do their physical screen tests, and I would also have to do their interview. And I always ask people, why do you want to be a Navy SEAL? And they always give me the same stupid answer. I want to be the best of the best of the best, sir. Something along those lines. I go, great. The best at what? The best scuba diver, the best skydiver, the best shooter. What do you want to be the best at? We're the best killers. That's what we are. We're not murderers. We're killers. And you're part of a kill squad. If you want to be the best of that and you think you have what it takes to not just take someone's life, but to lay your life down for the guy next to you, then maybe we'll have a conversation. I said, but let me ask you something. What if I'm wearing all my uniform? Let's call it my dress uniform, dress whites, dress blues, whatever, officer enlisted, doesn't matter. What is the most important part of my uniform? And almost everybody, I think everybody, but I'm going to say almost everyone because I can't remember someone saying otherwise, but they always say that your trident. So your trident's the gold eagle that you have on your chest that represents you as a Navy SEAL. And ironically, when you're a SEAL, you typically don't tell anybody you are. So for me, I was a Zamboni driver. I was a blimp line handler. I was a male cheerleader. I was a hockey player. I was anything but a SEAL. Now that I'm out, I don't really care. But while I'm in, you're always looking for a reason to to dance around the topic of what do you do for a living. But everyone says, I want, the most important part of uniform. And I say, nope, that's not it. I said, it's a really important part, obviously. So, but what do you think? Then they'll say, well, U.S. Navy, it says U.S. Navy on your tag. I'm like, nope, not that. Your rank, your awards, you come up with something. Nope. It's your last name. It's your last name. Because one day you'll no longer be a SEAL. One day you'll no longer wear that uniform. You'll no longer be part of a community. But your last name you'll have with you for the rest of your life. And it's not yours. It was your dad's. And it was his dad's. And it was his dad's. And when you have kids, it'll be their last names too. So when I'm talking to these young men that want to become Navy SEALs, I said, listen, when everything sucks and you're wet, you're cold, you're got full of sand, you look like a sugar cookie, every part of your body is just in utter pain, you haven't slept in days, and you got people yelling at you, telling you're the scum of the earth and all your friends just quit. And while you're going through the crucible to find out if you're one of the people that has what it takes to be a SEAL, if you can think multi-generationally at that moment, that the decision I make right now, how it affects my father and his father and everyone who wears that last name, whether it's in uniform or not. And then for my generations that are either, I either have a kid now or my future generations, if you can think multi-generationally when everything sucks, you'll make the right decision every time. And that's not only true in those extreme circumstances, but what does it mean when you're surfing the internet? You're going to watch the porn, or what does that mean, when you're walking down the beach? I work my company. I'm surrounded by beautiful women all the time because it's just the nature of the business I'm in tourism. And I constantly have to guard my eyes and only have eyes for my wife, like my father taught me. And I know my son watches me. I know he does. He has to. I want him to. And it's not that I'm 100% successful. I'm not standing here as the beacon of all things that are godly, but that is how I strive to be. Because it's a multi-generational way of thinking. Now, if you look at it as a believer, as a Christian, and you have your heavenly Father, and you call yourself a Christian, you happen to be a real one, not one of those fake placebo Christians. The decisions you make, do they honor your Father in heaven? Because people are watching you. Before I went to Bible school, before I went to Buds to be a SEAL, I went to Bible school to be a pastor. And that's why one of my nicknames was Stephen Kaplan. I would always lead Bible studies and everything.
That's so good.
But it's just, it's everywhere you go. You just have to represent the fact that you are you wear essentially two last names. You're two citizens as well. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I'm also a citizen of heaven. I have my natural father. His name is Paul Kaplan, the greatest, most honorable person on this planet. And then I have my heavenly Father. And if I'm a Christian, means little Christ, that means I represent my Father in heaven as his kid. What decisions do I make right now? How do they honor my heavenly Father? And if you do life right, you do both at the same time. You honor your heavenly Father and your natural father, and your kids get to see that. And then they get to replicate that culture when they become fathers themselves.
Yeah, man, what a powerful way to, when you're doing all these interviews, to connect with them and to tie it to their last name, to like who they are. There's something you said in there that I thought was pretty powerful and wanted to get your opinion on it. You said, even now at 44 years old, I don't want to disappoint my father, my dad, Paul. But I think some of us walk through life not wanting to disappoint our dad from like he's an unpleasable man. It's like a kind of an unhealthy thing, but you're saying this from a very healthy place. So tell me the difference between an unhealthy place and a healthy place to go like, I don't want to disappoint my father.
Yep. So I am unbelievably lucky. And that's what I am. I was born into an awesome family. That's luck. I didn't get to pick my family. I was born into a great family. So this is easy for me to say because I have not gone through the struggles of what it's like to have a bad father. As SEAL teams, there's two most common things. All these studies are done with this all the time. And by the way, there's a million F-22s landing behind me. So if you hear the sound of airplanes behind me, that's what's going on. The sound of
it's all good.
With I'm going to wait for this one. This one's loud. You hear it on your end?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Oh yeah, it sucks here. So anyway, with my father, I actually lost my train of thought. It was probably really awesome.
Yeah, no, just talking about
So,
that you were born into a family with a loving father. And you were saying in the SEAL teams, there's two types of guys, maybe.
well, there's two things that are most common
Okay.
among those that make it through. And there's always outliers, but they come from really good families with strong dads, where mom and dad are still married, and are good at chess. Those are kind of the two things that are the most common that have been found amongst most SEALs. They unfortunately don't usually make the best fathers because they're gone all the time, but they come from really good dads. So people that, and the reason for that is because they try to become a SEAL knowing who the heck they are. They're not trying to prove anything. And because, I mean, their father defined them. Your natural father defines you, your heavenly father defines you. That's your identity. But for those who don't have that luck, for whatever reason they were born into, or bad decisions that their father made, then you have to actually start a brand new culture yourself. And that's what I usually tell them. It's like you gotta actually. I mean, the scriptures. The first promise or the first commandment that comes with a promise is to honor your father and mother. So that's one of the 10 commandments, so that you'll have a long life, right? And it'll go well with you. So you can honor a person without respecting them. And that's it seems like the two should go together, but they don't. So honor is given, but respect is earned. Got a whole lot of F-22s back there. It's probably one more. They usually fly in pairs or groups of 6 or 7.
Oh, yeah.
So you get an opportunity, if you come from a bad family with a bad father, to actually start a brand new legacy. But you honor your father no matter who the heck he is. You can honor him because he's your dad. Period.
So what's the difference between, break it down a little bit, how you honor, but you honor and respect?
So honor you give, but respect is earned. So my father is an honorable and respectable person. He's respectable because the decisions he makes demands respect, and it demands it because he's such a respectable man. He doesn't demand it; the decisions he makes demands it, and but those are based on his lifestyle, his decisions, his value system, his love. And pick any topic in that regards. My father is a respectable man because of the decisions he makes. Now, if my father was a bad person, he's still my dad, and I need to honor him as my father. I honor him as my dad because that's what the scriptures tells me to do, and that is not easy to do for an unhonorable man. So I've had experiences like that in the military, where I would be under someone of leadership authority over me that I have zero respect for. But I needed to honor the fact that they had positional and rank, positional authority and rank over me, where I would have to go, yes, sir, roger that, and carry on and move on. But I never respected them. I still need to honor the fact that they hold the authority over me.
Yeah, man, I've never had those two broken down for me like that. And it makes a lot of sense. And it is, as you go like 30,000 foot view, it seems as though if our world was taught that, or our country was taught that, we would live a lot differently. Like a lot of this BS chaos and we would not have, because we're not honoring or respecting people.
Correct. I mean, even if you look at people's different political views, you don't need to respect the man in particular office or the woman in office, but you need to honor the fact that they're in authority over you. So sometimes you just got to take it on the chin and move on. And to a certain point, though, I mean, how do I say these things without getting in trouble? You can never sacrifice your integrity with some sort of goal in the name of honor. You just can't sacrifice your integrity. There are things that take priority in hierarchy over different things. So there's that. I can have a person in authority tell me to do something that I have moral objection to. Like, I don't know, this might make some people turn this podcast off, like getting a COVID vaccine. I wasn't going to do it. No one's going to force me to do this. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are in authority over me. I will not allow some experimental whatever to go inside my body. I don't even have a problem with vaccines. I just have a problem with using my body as an experiment. So, I mean, why would I do that to myself? And why would I bow the knee to someone who's using fear tactics over me to make me do something that I'm morally against? I'm spiritually against it too, but I have a moral objection as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't do that. And it cost me dearly to make that stance. So it's almost hypocritical for me to say to honor somebody in their positional authority, yet say no when they tell me to do something. And there's a finesse there in that. And you have to understand when it's time, and there's the scriptures, the Ecclesiastes, it talks about, hey, there's a time to kill, there's a time for peace, there's a time, there's a time for everything. You need to know what the right time is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, for the most part, to know you get the timing right every time is through your relationship with the Holy Spirit and having constant communication with God.
For sure.
To know what the time is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do things you just don't want to do because, well, God told you to do it, so shut up and do it.
Yeah.
You just sit there and move on. And other times it's much more gentle. Sometimes it's very abrupt.
Yeah.
So you have to know the timing. So,
and that only comes from alignment, right? Which is that constant in communication, in communion with God, right? Yeah. All right, my man. I got some more questions for you. So, in your opinion, and you've kind of already been digging into it, but if you were to put it in a couple sentences, what is the role of the father? So, like your role as a father, how would you describe that?
So, well, my role as a father is to raise a child to become an independent adult. That they don't need me. They don't need me financially. They don't need me. They don't need me emotionally. They don't need me. They don't need me to put a roof over their head. They don't need me to teach them anything where it comes to being an independent adult. So they don't need me for anything. Just see you there, sucker. So it's to actually raise someone to be independent without you. Then in their independence, you still, as a father, have a really awesome role in their life. It's just not necessary for them to sustain their life.
Mm.
And like my son right now, I went through some really hard times with my son. He made some really poor decisions in life that broke my heart. And I have made some really hard decisions because sometimes loving someone means you have to make really, really hard decisions. Where I actually kicked him out of my house. And my wife didn't run to rescue him. That was key. So I can make a really hard decision, but if your wife and I are not if you and your wife are not on the same page, it's all it does is causes a divide. So it wasn't because of what I did, it's because of what she did that actually changed him. Because she actually partnered with me when I was like, hey man, you made some really bad decisions. Beat it. And he lived in his car for a little bit. You know how hard that is as a dad? And I told my wife, he needs to hit rock bottom right now. I never want some kid to hit rock bottom. He needed it for that moment. He needed to feel what it was like to hit rock bottom. But at the same time, no, because I mean, it's the whole prodigal son story, Yeah. The father did in the prodigal son story, Jesus tells the story to his disciples. He says, listen, there's the kid wanted his inheritance. He wanted everything from the dad he can get and just beat it. See you later, sucker. And he goes off and wastes everything and ends up in the pig pen. And in the Jewish culture in which Jesus is telling us, anything that's related to a pig is unclean. And it's the most viable, disgusting thing that you could possibly imagine as a Jew. So, and I happen to be Jewish. I'm a Jewish believer. So there's that. My last name's Kaplan. This is as Jewish as it gets. From the Levitical tribe, by the way. So the priestly tribe. So, but the prodigal son, while hanging out in the pig pen, said, "Man, I wish I could just eat what the pigs are eating. The most unclean, the most disgusting, vile thing in the Jewish culture you could possibly imagine." And when he finally comes to his senses, the kid says, "I'll just go back to my dad. At least he could treat me as a slave, a servant. But I won't be having to hang out in this pig pen." Now, in the Jewish culture, hanging out in the pig pen, dad will never let the kid come back in. You're disowned. You're no longer my son. That's the whole. But when the son is walking back in his misery with nothing in his pockets, dad sees him from a long ways off. What does he do? He
runs out to him. Yeah.
Don't run. Jewish men don't run, especially in that culture. They don't run. The Jewish father runs to his son, embraces him, and welcomes him back and puts him back in the position he should have been in all along. And then there's the whole thing with the older brother talk. But the point is that the father needed his son to hit rock bottom for him to come to his senses. And that's what I had to do for my son. He had to hit rock bottom for him to come to his senses. And when he did, and he came back, just like I get running back to my son too, and I embraced him. Welcome back back, wear your last name proudly, and make the right
Mm-hmm.
decisions. And he has from that point on. That's really
Man,
tough.
yeah,
That's
what?
probably as tough as you can get.
Yeah, what a good story, dude. Thank you for sharing that. And is there any pieces of the story of like you and your wife being in alignment that would be helpful for dudes to hear? You know, because it's like you said, it was pretty big that your wife and you were in agreement on the situation, and for mom to not go rescue the son, which I could see is like, you know, like really tough. So I don't know, is there any other pieces to that kind of brought the two of you into alignment?
I would say that was the biggest one. And
Mm-hmm.
what sucked is that he was an adult then. He was in his young 20s.
Yeah.
And he was staying with me because he was working for me also at that time. So, I mean, there was a lot of, it was a really big deal. But prior to that, when we were not in agreement, my son did really poorly in high school because he's kind of the Ferris Bueller for the old folks out there like me. He was the Ferris Bueller of his school. And he just wanted to have a good time. He wasn't really anything, but he was just the class clown. He wanted to be everybody's friend and, you know, just live life on the edge. That was my son. But he did really poorly in school, and he didn't actually graduate high school. He graduated that summer, but the principal left it up to us to allow him, you know, to do the whole, you know, diploma ceremony. You know, they got the hat and they turned the tassel and all that crap. Right? And I told my wife, I said, don't let him do it. Don't let him walk. Let him feel what it's like right now. It's embarrassing, but let him feel what it's like to hit rock bottom right now, because it'll make a better man in the future. We were not in agreement, and she did. And I wasn't. Sometimes you pick and choose your battles, right?
Right.
I don't like fighting my wife, so I'm like, all right, not in agreement. It's like, it's not where I'm going. It's life or death stuff right now. So she let him walk, and I think that was a terrible decision because it gave the illusion of success, but it was just on the foundation of failure. So because of that mentality, I saw that ripple effect later on, and it was just devastating in his life, where you could just fail but not feel the repercussions of that. It's like you need to let your kids fail. You just have to. Failure is not a bad thing. Quitting is a bad thing. Failure is not bad. I failed all the time in my life. You just fail, face forward, you dust everything off, you get back up and move on. You just can't let somebody quit. Well, I didn't say you don't create a culture in which quitting is okay. But I try to create a culture in which failure is okay. Even my business, I allow people to fail. I just don't quit. Like you can fail, just fail forward, move on, learn from your mistakes, and let's go. But because my wife and I were not in agreement there, I think it caused years of what needed to happen to actually come into fruition for my son to realize who the heck he was and become the good man that he is today. But I think it could have been done earlier, and I think we have wasted time because of that. And it caused strife between my wife and I.
Yeah,
it's
of
like,
course.
What the heck's the point? Just let the kid fail. It'll be okay. He'll be all right. And ultimately, that was true. He was okay. He was all right.
Yeah.
But it brought us down a really tough path as parents, to watch your kid make poor decisions and looking to get bailed out all the time. It was really tough.
Yes, man, those decisions as a parent, and then you look back, but then they help give you, you know, like you said, you learn from your failures. So it's like it informed you for future moments. What's something, Steve, that you learned about yourself in being a father? So it's like you had a very intentional life, Bible school, then Buds, Navy SEAL, and then you step into this father role, you know, amongst business owner, other things. But through your father role, what's something that you've learned about yourself?
Lead by example, always. Always. And here's the thing. I deal with a lot of parents who made really bad decisions as kids or as teenagers or as young adults, and they see their kids starting to go down the same path, and they feel like hypocrites when they say, well, I did this and I turned out okay. But here's the thing. You can actually reset the standard, especially if you're a believer in Jesus. You definitely get to reset the standard, where you could say, you don't have to say, well, I did this, therefore it's okay if they do it. They smoke a joint, if they go out sleeping around, or they go partying, all that kind of stupid stuff. Reset the standard. Right is right, wrong is wrong. So I got to see my father live an example in front of me of what it means to be a good man. And that's what I did for my son. That's why when my son was out doing the stupid stuff, he always knew what right looked like.
Right.
He
Right.
always knew. And because of that, when he was living a life of sin and debauchery, because he was, uh, he could never enjoy it. It was always miserable to him because he knew what right looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But if you create a culture in which sin and debauchery is the norm in your own household, then it becomes the norm in their life outside the household as well. But you actually get to reset the standard. And I would encourage parents, fathers especially, if you lived a stupid life before, you get to reset the standard, hold the standard high of what right and wrong actually looks like, and you live it in front of your kids. Don't just say something and be a hypocrite and do the other thing on the other end. Your words matter. And I always say there's two things that make a real man. How good is your word, and how do you treat your woman? Singular woman. That's the only two things. All these people that come to me and want to become Navy SEALs all the time, they say, if you're trying to prove yourself as a man, this is not the community for you. It's just not. It's just not. You want to be a good man, be true to your word, be good to your woman. That's it. That's a real man. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what the world's success, praises you. I don't care if you're a celebrity, a Navy SEAL, a garbage man, a lawyer. It doesn't matter to me. How good is your word? And how do you treat your woman? That's it. That's it. That's all that matters.
Dude, that's so good. And yes, if we could raise our young men to know that to be true and to live that way, our world would look different. And that's our responsibility and opportunity as fathers is to lead our boys down that path. Hey, this podcast is called Fatherhood Field Notes. You're opening up your field notes, sharing your life with us. The mantra behind it is rebel and create. This idea that, like, as men, we want to be in battle. We want to wrestle with something. We want to fight for something, but not to be destructive, to create something beautiful in its place. So with that in mind, what's something that you are rebelling against? And then what do you hope to create in its place?
I absolutely 100% rebel against the things of this world. Mm-hmm. Now, for those that are listening to this that are actually Christians, they know what that means, but I'll try to define it. The culture of this world, what's acceptable, was considered good or okay or culturally appropriate, I rebel against. Because only God can define what's good and what is evil. And there's things in our culture today that I am 100% dead set against. I don't know, how blunt am I allowed to be on this podcast?
Blunt as you want to be.
All right, I'm against homosexuality. As disgusting and vile as I think it is, but on the other end of that same spectrum, I love the homosexual because I'm called to love those people by Jesus. I have people that I reach out to in my company that are how do I say this? They don't live the lifestyle that I would approve of, and I love them unconditionally. So I could be dead set against the culture. I could be dead set against the lifestyle, but at the same time still love the person. Yeah. But I'm against it because I see how destructive it is, and I see how and I would call it straight up evil because God does. Because God is actually the one who gets to define good and evil, not the culture. So I'm against cultural norms, against cultural movements and what would be considered progressive, to make a stand in what's right and wrong. Now, I get in a lot of trouble because of that, because I can make a stand, but what people don't typically see is the other end of the spectrum. How I can still love the people that are involved in the cultural bubbles that they affiliate themselves with, the LGBT alphabet soup, exclamation point, asterisk, plus sign, whatever. Like, I'm so 100% against that, but at the same time, I'm so welcoming to those people at the same time. So it's a weird dichotomy that you got to live with. Jesus did the same thing. Jesus was accused by all the religious leaders of his day for hanging out with gluttons and sinners and prostitutes. And all the religious leaders like, oh, if you're such a godly guy, how are you able to do these things? So it's not the healthy that need the doctor, it's the sick.
Yeah.
So I get to actually, in the name of rebellion, because that's what that is, against the cultural norms, I actually get to be an example to people I would never reach otherwise of what it means to be someone that loves others that don't agree with you.
And I think it's missed. Yeah, it's missed in our culture that you can have a belief, a conviction, and you can also be kind and loving. I mean, it's almost like the honor and respect thing, but we want to throw out the person if we don't all think exactly the same. So where do you get your confidence to to not just think the things that you believe, but to be, like willing to say and talk about them without you're not worried about the impact. You're not worried about the impact that it has to you, or if somebody doesn't like you, if somebody's upset by it. Like, where do you get that conviction or that confidence?
From my identity in Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing else. And here's the thing: when you surrendered your life to God, when you actually do, and you're not a placebo Christian that just goes to church and pays your 10% tax and gets a feeling during worship services, who cares? But when you make a decision to lay down your life, and I mean lay it down means you're dead. It's not like you're dead man walking. You have given your life to Christ, and now every day that you live, you pick up your cross and follow him. That's not a typical message someone preaches at a pulpit that make you want to feel good. Christianity is a death march to a life camp. So you lay down your life to figure out what life is all about. And as someone that has laid down your life, like, who can hurt you after that? Even if they take your life, this bag of bones that we live in, who cares? Like, even in the SEAL teams, I have many nicknames. One of them, they called me Psycho, because amongst a bunch of group of crazy people, they thought I was the crazy one. And one of the reasons is that I like being the number one guy, always. Like, number one guy to kick down the door, number one guy volunteered for everything. So they thought I was like, I thought I had a death wish. I didn't have a death wish. I just wasn't afraid of dying. That doesn't mean I wasn't afraid of the manner of dying. I didn't want to suffer. Nobody does. But for me, life is a win-win situation no matter what, because the worst thing that can happen to me is I'm dead. Great. I'm in heaven. You can't threaten me with heaven. Oh, well, I'm going to end up there one day anyway. So what other fear is above the fear of death? There's nothing. Everything is subservient to the fear of death. The fear of what someone thinks about me, who cares? The fear, how about the fear of failure? Who cares? You're going to fail. If you take that thing called fear is just faith. It's faith in content. So I replace it with faith in the sense that something good is going to happen. By the way, good isn't always pleasurable. It hurts a lot. So, but all things work together for the good for those who love Christ Jesus and are called according to his purposes, right? So that's me. And so I know that even if I make this decision in faith and not fear, something on the other end is going to end up good. It might even lead to my death. That could be good too. And if you're okay with that, you'll always make the right decisions. People surrendered their life to the flames, got crucified upside down, went through the Colosseum in the early church age. People today in China and other places on this planet are being martyred for their faith. And to call that good, you need to know who the heck you are. Where does fear die in that? Or someone might make fun of me, or I'll lose money in my business. Oh, well, I lost $1.6 million standing up for this COVID regime. That cost me dearly. But I would never bow the knee to tyranny. I would never do it. And I would never sacrifice somebody's freedom. This is what they were asking me to do, to report my staff and their COVID vaccine status. And if they're wearing masks, I'm not infringing on their rights, period. And you're not infringing on my rights. So I'm not going to tell you. And I suffered dearly for that financially, but I get to look at myself in the eyeballs in the mirror and be proud of who's looking back at me.
Yeah. And then something else that is that you put in the form I had sent over is just this idea around, like, every decision you make ripples throughout time. Right. And I love how you've tied it not just to future Kaplans, but to past, like my father, my grandfather. Right. It's like both ways. The man that I am, in a sense, has impact. Right. It has impact on your son and your son's son's son. But how, and I agree with you, it also has an impact in a sense on the past generations. And what do you think about that?
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Why in our culture, and maybe to a degree, your convictions around, Navy SEAL and Christianity and even, Jewish Christian, there's some strong heritage that you have, right? Like a lot of Americans, I would say, don't have that. Like they don't even know who their great grandfather was. They don't really know much about their grandfather. I think it's a really missed. We're kind of like stuck in just our own little time frame, not really thinking too much about the past. And really, I mean, if we look at our daily actions, not really considering our great grandkids. Talk to me about your thoughts around that. Like what a missed opportunity for people.
Yeah, I think everyone's just so consumed with this all day long.
Yeah, their phone. Yeah.
Their phone and me. I feel, I want, I feel. In fact, usually when someone has a thought, they don't even say I think, they say I feel now. I feel like this, I feel like that. Like stop feeling and start thinking. So if you start thinking, it's going to come natural to you that the decisions that you make will ripple throughout eternity, both into your past and into your future. And I say past because, I mean, you asked the question, how do you honor an unhonorable father? Or it feels like an honorable, unrespectful father. Well, you do it by the decisions you make today. If you can make a decision today, it'll bring honor to him, whether he deserved it or not, in your eyes. So that's an easy way to honor your dad. But obviously, it's easy to talk about how it'll affect the future, or at least it feels easy. But if you can look, say, the decisions you make, how it affects the past, or at least those in your past, that's how you do that. So I don't know, help me get back on track. No. My brain don't work so good sometimes.
No, man. No. I'm going to ask you a couple last questions. Before I ask my two final questions, I do just want to, like, talk to hundreds of people. You probably have the coolest job on the planet right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I would love, like people come to Hawaii all the time. I would love for them to go follow your Instagram, see what you do, and then schedule a time to come have the most memorable, experience ever. So tell me what it is you do and where people can find you.
Okay. Well, I started a company because I couldn't find a cool job after, so I just made one. And
you did well.
I'm on Oahu. Yeah, and I took the fun parts of being a Navy SEAL and made a company around it. So I have a gun range up on the North Shore. I have a really beautiful boat. Holds 42 people, and we use it for snorkeling and for scuba diving. And then I have a helicopter, and we jump out of helicopters to go scuba diving and snorkeling. And we're the only company in the world where you're allowed to do that, legally at least. I mean, if you have a ton of money and you're not exchanging dollar bills between, a customer, then anybody can do that. But as a for-profit company, I'm the only company that's allowed to do that. It's because I wrote all the instructions for the FAA and they totally approved it. And if there's any SEALs watching, I used a 3003 Bravo edition, which is what we call the Air Bible. And I just repurposed it, made it sound more civilian instead of military, submitted it, and they approved it. They kicked it back once, but it took about a year, got it approved, and then I got it insured. That was a nifty little trick because they look at it like skydiving. There's not a skydiving company on the planet that's insured, which we skydived too, by the way. But I got it insured too, which is how I can actually legally represent my company through third parties for them to sell my stuff. So that was a big deal. So we go snorkeling, scuba diving, jump out of helicopters, shooting. We do sort of helicopter tours, not daily. Our tours include, we call it the Navy SEAL for a Day experience, where we start in a helicopter. We do this nap of the earth flying, which is basically you feel like you're trimming the trees and the valleys and the mountains, and it's a roller coaster ride. It's awesome. Then we get to the gun range. We shoot for a few hours, all taught by Navy SEAls, retired like me. Old and broken. How old did I say I was? Like
115.
115. I was off right here. And then we fly back after. When we fly back, we get a whole island tour. And then you jump out of the helicopter into the ocean, strap on scuba gear, hop on an underwater scooter. They're called DPVs, dive propulsion vehicles. You scoop from one location to another, get picked up by the boat, and end up where you started back at my shop.
Bro, it's so wild.
A lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
We do all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, but my Instagram is Trident Adventures Hawaii. And it's called Trident Adventures because the pin that we wear as a Navy SEAL is called the Trident. Yeah. So Trident Adventures Hawaii. It's all one word. It's got the little blue check mark I got to pay for. So, because there's a couple of them out there. There are actually old ones that I made that suck. So we started and made new ones. So Trident Adventures of Hawaii with the little blue check mark. And yeah, you guys will see. You see all the cool things we do. My favorite thing that we do is we have a nonprofit called Honor Watch Foundation. Honor, let's play on words. Honor, like courage and honor. Honor Watch Foundation. And we take people that are super messed up. I mean, super messed up. People that have some serious TBI, missing body parts, Make-A-Wish kids. We take wounded warriors, but mostly we take people with ALS. And we give them the best day of their lives. And it's the coolest thing. It's like hitting a massive reset button and punching somebody in the head. Oh, yeah, I can live again.
That's epic.
So it's the coolest thing. Like I had a quadriplegic. I mean, broke his neck. His name is Seth. He jumped out of a helicopter with us about, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago. I mean, broke his neck jumping. He was in a drunken stupor I think he was 18 or 19. He jumped off a boat head first into a sandbar about 2 feet deep.
Oh,
Broke his neck. Yep. And he was joining the Air Force 2 days later.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah, he was joining the Air Force. And anyway, so long, tragic story. Many, many years later, I think it's 13, 15, 14 years later, I'm meeting him. He calls me up and says, hey, I saw some of your videos on your Instagram at Trident Adventures Hawaii. When we take people with ALS, worst disease on the planet, and throw them out of the helicopter, people that can't walk, they can barely move their arms if they can at all, can't really talk. We throw them out of helicopters and take them scuba diving. All the things the doctors say is impossible. I mean, when I built my company around everything the doctors told me were impossible. I got medically retired out of the SEAL teams at 16 years after I lost most of my lungs and other internal body parts. So everything the doctors, if I even lived, they said if all the things I'm doing right now, I would never be able to do again. So
here we are.
Yeah, living a life of as a rebel.
That's right.
There's nothing for you. So yeah, I don't take those death sentences ever. I take life sentences all day long. So he asked me about if I could take him scuba diving. He's like, there's no way I could do helicopter stuff. And he's deathly afraid of the water because that's how he broke his neck. And he wants to conquer his fears. And that's what we do. Like whether it's something extreme like this or someone that, going snorkeling for the first time, they don't even take a bath because they're afraid of the water. So those people, we help them overcome their fears. That's called courage. Even in the SEAL teams, people think that you must be so fearless. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not fearless at all. I'm courageous. Being courageous is what you do in the face of fear, not lacking fear. If you lack fear, you're crazy. Like you're not right in the head. Like you need to be, in a straitjacket. But myself, SEALs, all of us, we all have fear. We just face our fears. We're courageous people, not fearless people. And that's what I try to infuse in all my guests is courage. How to look fear in the face and tell it to shut up and overcome it. And that's what we do. So I take this guy, Seth, and I said, not only can we get you scuba diving, bro, I'm going to totally throw you out of the helicopter. And then I'm going to take you scuba diving. And we took his wife too. They were just married. I mean, oh my gosh, what an incredible woman that marries a quadriplegic. After, not before he got injured, after he got injured. They met each other in church. It's a beautiful story.
Wow.
So I don't know how to do it, but I mean, that's a freaking awesome woman right there. But we threw them both out of the helicopter. It's all on our Instagram. You can see the video. Threw him out of the helicopter, took him scuba diving, got him standing with his wife underwater because you're weightless. So he's standing with his wife underwater. And for the first time, they're actually standing, looking at each other, eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Wow.
And that's what we do. We change people's lives. People with ALS all the time, taking people with ALS. We partner with the Gleason Foundation. Steve Gleason he was an NFL player, played for New Orleans Saints, right? That's the football team. I suck at sports, but he played for them. I know he's number 37 because that's what his little sticker is. And we partner with them. And he has ALS, so he sends people with ALS to us all the time.
Oh, wow.
We roll carpet and throw them out. Do tons of stuff with Make-A-Wish kids. We did this whole Navy SEAL for a 3-day event with this girl named Lila. We're actually making a TV show about it. We have 3 TV shows we're making actually. Same thing. We just take people that are super messed up and give them the best day of their lives. But with Lila, who has seizures all day long, except when she's with me. Right? All day long, she just falls down. She wears a helmet because she has seizures. And I love this little girl. She's, I think, 15 now, but I met her when she was 11. And she wanted to be a SEAL. that was her wish from Make-A-Wish. So the people at Make-A-Wish are some of the most wonderful human beings on this planet. A guy named James who works there, he calls me up and says, "Hey, we have this girl from Maui who wants to be a Navy SEAL." I go, "Cool." And you can't really tell me much about her for kind of PII reasons. So try and look her up. Can't find anything. So I was like, "Dude, throw me a bone, dude. I just need to know what I'm working with." Like, well, number one, why does she want to be a SEAL? Well, she wants to be a SEAL because her favorite television show is Hawaii Five-O. Not the old ones, but the new ones. Oh, I work on the show. I'm a consultant on the show, and I do some stunts and some acting on it too. As far as being a stuntman goes, I'm a little below average. I mean, there's some amazing stuntmen. I am not that.
Still, dude, so fun. That's epic.
Yeah. And then I did acting too. Now, here's the thing about acting. I thought actors were a bunch of wussies until I tried it myself. I was way off. It is way harder than it looks. I mean, way harder. I was sweating bullets for like 2 weeks to memorize one line, to do it right while standing at the spot and having the emotions. And because you're fake. I don't know how to be fake. And here's the crazy thing. As a stuntman, which I am, not a good one, don't mind me, I had to have a good one come in and do a fight scene for me. Like, I know how to fight, man. I'm a Navy SEAL. I don't know how to fake fight.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. And I had to have someone come in, put a wig on that looked like my long head of hair at the time, and do this fight scene for me. I'm like, well, that's embarrassing. But there's no way I could have done it even a quarter as good as he did. So like,
oh my gosh.
Anyway,
well,
so this.
Oh, go ahead.
What's up?
No, please finish on the girl.
This girl, she wanted to be a Navy SEAL because the main character on her show is her hero. He plays a Navy SEAL show. He plays Steve McGarrett. His name is Alex. He's a really close friend of mine. So we put this whole thing together for her, where I used to have the Fort Kill houses and this whole tactical ranges and all this stuff. That's all with airsoft guns. So brought her on. I had 200 volunteers. This whole event cost probably like $300,000. I mean, It was maybe more. I don't know, but it was, and I didn't pay that. Nobody did. It was all volunteers. It was volunteer people coming in. I didn't have to pay for it. All their military garb I didn't have to pay for. I think it was like $40,000 worth of smoke grenades shipped in. I only had to pay the hazmat fees. It was all donated. I had a tank. I had a Humvee. I had all this stuff, right? And we put this whole thing. And this girl comes up. She comes up in a wheelchair. I'm like, oh crap, she's in a wheelchair. Remember, I didn't know anything about her.
Yeah.
I didn't even know her last name. I just know her first name. And I show up to her, and I'm acting like Steve McGarrett from Hawaii Five-O, and I go, "Lila, stand up." And she looks at her mommy and I said, "Don't you dare look at your mother. You're a Navy SEAL today. No Navy SEAL looks at their mommy. Stand up." And I'm acting all tough. And she looks up. I said, "What did I say?" She says, I say yes, sir. She goes, "Yes, sir." I said, "Say it like you got a pair." She goes, "Yes, sir." I said, she stands up, and I had her just like that. And she went back to her wheelchair for the rest of the day. And she all day, since I think she was 2, she just falls over with having seizures all day long. She has a very rare disease. And I brought her in, taught her all this tactical stuff. I had all these actors put this whole
my gosh.
Yeah, all of her heroes. And then after we do all this training with night vision goggles and lasers and everything and throwing smoke grenades everywhere, we hop in the Humvee because her wish was actually to get a picture in a Humvee looking like a Navy SEAL. And I told the people that was stupid. I was going to put something together for them. So we did the photo op in the Humvee, which is what her wish was. And then we left and we came back. It was the zombie apocalypse. So we had 160 bad guys out there all shooting at her. But we actually had ammo, like 20,000 rounds of airsoft with an automatic gun. She wasn't strong enough to hold the gun, so I just held it for her. She just held the trigger, and we just mowed everybody down. Hiked through this makeshift village and everything, rescued a guy and came out, and then pinned her as an honorary Navy SEAL, having her walk on top of a tank. Like she showed up in a wheelchair, and now she's climbing on top of a tank to get pinned. So then I took her scuba diving, and I threw her out of a helicopter later. But that's the stuff that's what I love to do. Things like that.
I mean, dude, how do you get more epic than that, right? Like taking these gifts that you have, this life that you have, this dream you had to make an epic job. And it's not like you're not here going, I'm just going to pick somebody random. Like, Mark Zuckerberg jumped out of my helicopter last week. It's like I get to go spend a day, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make this 11-year-old girl have dreams come true. I took this guy who can't stand him up at the bottom of the ocean. Like these things are beautiful, and you're taking this life experience you have and giving it to people to just give dreams. And I mean, yeah, dude, it's like you're on Instagram and I've just scrolled, so many videos and photos of people just doing something that you created that you literally can't get anywhere else on the planet.
Nowhere else on the planet. And we get to do it in Hawaii. And the whole fatherhood side, every one of these things I do, I always included my son. Always. Everything I do, I always included my son. So he gets to watch me change people's lives. And that, I mean, does not our Heavenly Father do the same thing? He gets to do it all himself, but he includes us in everything.
Ah, dude.
That's the honor.
That's
a real believer.
Man. Ah, Steve, so good. My friend, my last question for you. It's a legacy question. Imagine 40 years from now, you're 80 years old, you're standing, peering into the home of your son. What is it that you see being played out in his house, in his world, that just puts a big old smile on your face? And you're like, I was here, I showed up, I gave what I needed to give.
So I think one of the greatest things that someone can say and actually mean it is, follow me as I follow Christ. And I think I've lived a life where I can say that to my son. And the most honorable thing that I could ever see 80 years from, or as an 80-year-old man, is watching my son be able to say that to his kids. That would be the best legacy I think I could leave behind. And hopefully he becomes greater than me. And any father always wants his son to become greater than him. My father thinks that of me. And what's funny is my dad calls me his hero and I call him my hero. Like, I mean, how much better does it get than that? But, and I think there'll be a day where I'll be able to say that about my son too, by how he treats his wife. And he just got engaged.
Oh, amazing.
He took my helicopter to the top of a mountain and got engaged to his now fiance. And she's way too good for him. So I was like, bro, don't screw this one up, man. She is awesome. I mean, she is awesome. But to be able to see my son carry himself in a way, and the decisions he makes and the words that he speaks and how he loves his wife, to be able to look at that and say, he's a better man than me. That would be the best.
Stephen, dude, thank you so much. I mean, coming into getting to connect with you, Joe connecting us, Andy giving you mad props, just all that you're doing. I was really looking forward to connecting with you. I'm looking forward to coming over and taking some of my kiddos to come on some of your adventures, in the future. Thank you for the way that you show up for the world. Thank you for the way that you follow Christ and your willingness to not just hold it in your heart, but to share it with the world around you in every opportunity you get from love. So I look forward to continuing to get to know you and follow you, and just appreciate knowing there's men like you out in the world who are really walking the walk and taking every breath, every opportunity to share it with the world.
Yes, sir. There's more of us than you think.
And you know what? That's what yes, there are. And that's the beautiful thing, is when we have a moment to connect and you're like, hey, I'm not alone. There are other guys putting their feet on the ground in the morning saying, good morning, God, let's go. And it's wonderful when we get to cross paths with those men.
Yeah. And then if you need a place to stay, bud, we got 2 rooms right there and there.
Love it. All right, my friend, until next time.
All right. Aloha, brother.
Sick. Okay, so we're good. I'll cut it off there, but at least it ended there. Dude, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Dude, you're doing so much cool stuff. It's just it's incredible. What a beautiful life you've created with the opportunities God's given you.
Yes, sir. I mean it. Come here and stay with me. Bring your kids. I got 2 rooms.
Love it. I would love for my son to come out. My daughter too. She needs to she's hit a little bit of a rough patch, but yeah, we're moving into a new house today, thank God. And it's going to give us some space, and then my world's going to free up a bit, but we'll come out and come do some of your adventures.
Say when, man. It'd be an honor to have you.
All right, dude. Appreciate you. And hopefully our paths will cross soon.
They will.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.
Aloha.
Bye. Oh my guys, what an incredible conversation. I'm still just sitting here thinking about all the moments, all the thoughts, all the things that Steve shared. Truly incredible. The two things that I'm really walking away from this conversation is, number one, this idea of honor and respect, how to give honor, but how to allow room that people earn respect. And the second one is that good is not always pleasurable. There's a sentence he said, and I think what a great piece of knowledge, truth to share with our children. If we are resetting the standards, as Steve talked about, that our culture is constantly looking for what feels good. And Steve is challenging us to think, and then also to live a life that is not just pursuing the comforts this world has to offer, which when he talked about his son, he couldn't even enjoy the what the world says is fun, right? You can't even enjoy it when you know who you are and you know the truth. All right, my friends, if these conversations are powerful, please write a review. Shoot this over to somebody. Hey, listen to this podcast. You would really enjoy it. I want to say thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.